We live, Nicholas? This thing
Indeed.
working? Testing, testing. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Think we're good.
It is officially spooky week, Nicholas.
Yeah, damn
Are you
right.
ready? Are you ready?
I
What are you dressing up as this year for St. Hallows Eve?
Nothing interesting. I recently came into obtained some scrubs, so I'm just going as a nurse. While the missus is going as Wednesday Adams. She's the
Naughty,
show this year.
naughty nurse Nick. Look at that. Fun story about scrubs. I may have shared this. I mean, I've shared stories about my days in chiropractic school before. I think it was with the
With DB.
Kill Your Darlings crew, right?
Oh,
And
that too.
and
Yep.
and,
Yeah.
and Bob
Oh, that's
Quinn, right? And
yeah.
talking about my old anatomy, one of my gross anatomy professors, and in lab, as we're doing cadaver dissections, because I have, Nicholas, in fact, dissected a cadaver. He would he wouldn't use gloves, and he'd be digging around the innards, and like, I know this is gross, but it's spooky season, so it's apropos.
Yeah.
When you're in there, there's there's a lot of fat, right? Whether the person was fat or not, they're still there. It's covering, and like he would like use his fingers and shit, and like just fucking rub it out of the way and get out of the way, and get fleshy bits on his beard and shit. Absolutely gross and disgusting. And I remember the first time, because you've got to saw through someone's chest plate, right, to get to the, all the stuff underneath. And the smell of a saw going through bone like that, I'm surprised I can still eat them, but it, like, I don't know, for some reason smelled like nacho cheese Doritos. Like, it just had that weird smell to it. Yeah,
Get out.
weird as hell. Um, but you said scrubs, which made me think. So we spent the better part of the first year and a half of chiropractic school, right? 3 trimesters, gross anatomy. No, sorry, so the first year, um, just in the lab. You're in there. You're living in the lab, right? And you're because these exams are no joke. And when you're done, it's a big thing. It's a rite of passage that when you've completed and passed gross anatomy, you and your fellow classmates get fucking hammered, and you throw a scrub burning party where you have a giant bonfire and everyone takes their scrubs and they throw them in the fire. Nicholas, I shit you not. It's like you were tripping on goddamn shrooms. The colors that come out of this fire from those scrubs, all the chemicals and shit that you've been ensconced in for the better part of a year. It's just blues and pinks and purples and oranges. It is
What?
effing wild, man.
Oh,
Effing wild.
God. Thank God I don't mark these. I mark the episodes explicit because I don't think the people are ready for that. But it is appropriate for the season. So thank you for
Well, that's why
scarring
I
everybody.
shared it now, and we'll probably repeat it next year, because I have the brain of Swiss cheese and forget things like that. And with that said, Nurse Nicholas, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of all spooky ages, TLDR Studios proudly presents to you the greatest, and I mean the greatest, podcasting team in the world. He's the comic book writer, Nick Friar. I am your supreme dictator and tyrant for life, Dr. Joe Gilmore. And together we are the TLDR Comic Book Club, baby. How you doing, Nicholas?
That was your best of all time, without question.
Oh,
That
get
was
out of here. Get out of
no,
here.
I genuinely mean that. So we got to get moving on things. I want to remind everybody, of course, we have been doing mainline all month for spooky season, which is what Joe and I wanted to do. Generally, whatever we want to do is what comes to fruition. Sometimes what we want to do is actually talk to more creators across the industry instead of doing mainline books, as much as that is how the show originally started. And the only way that you can get those conversations, nice shirt, by the way, the only way you can get those conversations is if you subscribe to one of our audio channels. We're talking Apple, Spotify, Geeks Worldwide Radio, Pocket Cast, Amazon, where the major podcasting platforms, you're going to find us there. If you listen on another podcasting platform and somehow you stumbled upon us on YouTube, on X/Twitter, or on Instagram Live, make sure you let us know if we're not on that platform that you listen to. We'll get our stuff over there. All the while, make sure you leave a 5-star rating review for the show when you check us out on our audio channels. Otherwise, you're going to learn the real meaning of backcracker. But again, you want to subscribe to the show because that's the only place you can get those conversations with different writers and creators across the industry. But today, Joe, we are not doing a Friar Side Chat. You never know when one of those things are going to pop up, though. We may have some pokers in the fire right now. But today, we both have horror books to talk about to close out spooky season on very different ends of the spectrum. I'm excited to hear about your book. No catching up for us today, but we do have an early look at another book this week that's going to be coming out to start out November. Do you want to tell the people about Exit City, Joe?
Oh man, we're very lucky, Nicholas. We are blessed. We get a lot of review copies, but Mad Cave does a really good job at sending us advanced review copies, and allowing podcasters and reviewers and all that the chance to sort of get the word out. So we've had a great string of books from Mad Cave over the last few weeks where we've been able to sort of give everyone a first look at. So Exit City, I was about to say last week's Exiles. No, that's out this week. That's out this week. Exit City issue 1 is dropping on the 6th of November. Written by Mark London with art by Kyle Mostert. And man, I've loved every one of these books for different reasons. Some of them which have been in a shared universe, some not. This Exit City is a great sort of futuristic sci-fi detective story. So I love the vibe that you get right off the bat. I will say it did take me a little bit longer for it to kind of get its hooks into me, but once it did, man, there was no looking back. This is what I love about this. It's sort of like your sort of classic buddy cop situation where you have one detective, who's by the books, and you have another detective that is as corrupt as Yao Ming is tall. And they don't hide it, right? And that's just sort of the world in which they live in. Like, you're the outlier by being by the book cop versus being the corrupt one. And that's exactly why they're paired, right? Because they're like, you need a little, someone's gonna get their fingers dirty to solve this one. And I absolutely loved it. And I talked about sort of some of these books being part of a shared universe. This is part of the, Mark London's Underworld universe. So if you're into sort of that futuristic sci-fi, detective, similar or akin to, Blade Runner-esque, I think this is a book for you. I really enjoyed it. And surprise, surprise, I love what Mad Cave has been doing this year. That's going to be that's a tease for later on this year. But Exit City issue 1. Make sure you if you haven't put it on your pull list already, when you get to your local comic book shops the week of November 6th, you grab that book because it's a doozy.
Yeah, they have been on a heater. That is for damn sure. Obviously, we talked about Exiles most recently. That is out this week. We won't be digging into that again, but I will say, like, if you are a Constantine, however you want to pronounce it, if you are a fan of Hellblazer, you need to be checking out Exiles. And it is written by friend of the show, Cullen Bunn, who we've talked to quite a bit before. Obviously, Joe and I are always checking out his titles, but this one, man, this might be my favorite one that he's done in a little while. So it was very promising first issue. But that is enough about that. Let's get into the new releases this week. Obviously, we started with Mad Cave, but we always start with Marvel. So why don't you lead us off with that, please?
All right. From Marvel Comics, we have The Amazing Spider-Man, issue 60, Ultimate X-Men, issue 8, Wolverine Revenge and its Red Band edition, issue 3. One is a lot less censored than the other one is. That's written by
Hickman and Capullo.
Hickman and with art by Capullo. Thank you, Sir Nicholas. Excellent issue. Absolutely excellent issue. Wolverine Revenge just goes together like peanut butter and jelly. It is so nice. Captain America issue 14, Phases of the Moon Knight issue 3, Predator vs. Black Panther issue 3. This is the one book I didn't get a chance to read this week that I wanted to. It's been excellent so far. written by Benjamin Percy. Venom War is Zombie Oats issue 3, Deadpool Team Up issue 3, Namor or Namor, as some might say, issue 4, Chasm Curse of Cain issue 3, Star Wars The Battle of Jakku Insurgency Rising issue 3, Marvel Meow Infinity Comic issue 19, real spooky, and Venom War Fantastic Four issue Uno.
From DC, we got Action Comics 1073, Batman, The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, issue 2, Nice House by the Sea, issue 4. Of course, that's James Tynion. Batman, Wayne Family Adventures, issue 136, Multiverses, Collision Detected, issue 4, Green Arrow 2024 Annual, issue 1, Penguin Special, issue 1. Have you been watching the Penguin, Joe?
No, I got to. I'm at the point now where I can rip through that. I still have to rip through Rings of Power. I don't know, man.
Yeah, it happens.
I've been single parenting for the past 5 days. I'm fucking exhausted.
Well, what better way to recover than by watching a bunch of cool shit? You should add Vox Machina to that list too, because I know I got on that train. That third season just ended, and those are like 20 to 30-minute episodes. It's so good. I got to read one of those titles for the show to talk about that in detail on
like
here.
that.
But yeah, the Penguin has been of all the things going on right now, the Penguin is probably the most accessible for people, and then probably the absolute best too.
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard.
So much good stuff right now though on TV. And then Wonder Woman Uncovered issue 1, which I believe is a series of covers of Wonder Woman, like the one we got from Nightwing recently. And then we got a one-shot from DC that I did want to highlight. Normally, we don't talk a whole lot about one-shots, but it's not every day that you're seeing Poison Ivy and Swamp Thing paired up together. This title is Poison Ivy, Swamp Thing, Feral Trees, issue 1, written by G. Willow Wilson, art by Mike Perkins, and then colors by Mike Spicer. And 48 pages, so you're getting a whole full story with this one. And this is must-read for Poison Ivy fans and Swamp Thing fans. And that doesn't, and whether or not you're fans of both or fans of just one, you definitely want to check this out because G. Willow Wilson is just, I know you have, I'm blanking on the title from her, from
Hunger
IDW.
in the Dusk. And
Hunger
I got to talk
Dusk.
about it. Yeah.
You're going to be talking about that soon. Obviously not appropriate for spooky season, but you will be talking about that soon. I'm dying to check that one out. I talked about her Poison Ivy run on here before. After reading that Poison Ivy run, without having really knowingly at least checked out a ton of other stuff, I anytime I see something new with her name on it, I'm going to be giving it a look. And she has such a great command of Poison Ivy, and I love what she did with Swamp Thing in this issue too. Having those two side by side, being similar but also being very different, was very appealing. I would love to see a larger story spin out of this. I think with this, you could just leave it as its own thing and then just find another reason to, or use it as a reason to get them back together in some capacity. It would be great because G. Willow Wilson proved to me in this issue right away, you can write really interesting Swamp Thing stuff. And obviously she does a great job with Poison Ivy. Also for those of you who you're just continuously obsessed with scratching that spooky season itch like Joe and I are, this is a title that's gonna go there. It's not as dark as some of the other stuff that we talk about, like Exiles, for example, but it's got that spooky vibe. So it's a little bit more it's similar, but not full in with the spookiness. It's more like the atmosphere of it, I would say. So yeah, Poison Ivy, Swamp Things, Feral Trees. It's listed as an issue 1. It is a one shot. Pick that up if you see it at your local comic shop this week.
All right. I'm gonna take us through the next two, Nicholas, if you don't mind. That's me grabbing the bull by the horns.
Go for it.
You can also get a good look at a cow by sticking your head up a butcher's. Anyways, from Boom Studios, we have Dune, House of Carino, issue 7, Power Rangers Across the Morphin Grid, issue 1, and Uncanny Valley, issue 6. This was an excellent issue. Nick and I are not going to dive deep into it because there's a lot of stuff that happens and it revolves around a pretty big reveal that we just don't want to give away. And it's hard to sort of dance around it and do the book justice. So maybe we'll speak more of that next week but Uncanny Valley, excellent. Yeah. Excellent stuff. And then from Dark Horse, great week from Dark Horse.
Yeah.
We have Swartha, also known as Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures, issue 11, Nightclub 2, issue 3, which is excellent. I know I talked about the first arc of Nightclub on the show like a year ago. This is a Mark Miller joint. But I gotta tell you, so far, 3 issues in, this is already better than the first arc.
Wow.
Like maybe by a country mile, which is saying something because
Jeez,
of
that
the
is.
just the setup and man, effing excellent.
Nice.
Anansi Boys issue 5, The Magic Order 5 issue 2, Patra issue 3, and then 2 books we'd like to discuss. Nicholas, you choose where we lead off here.
I'm gonna go with Kill All Immortals, issue 4, by friend of the show, Zach Kaplan, the writer of the series, and then Fico Ossio, the artist. And look, in general, continues to be an awesome story, of course. Like, I'm enjoying all the action and the Vikings and all that kind of stuff. But this issue just changed the vibe of the entire story. Like, shit got very real, very fast. I'm still blown away by it, Joe. I don't know about you, but I just an absolute jaw-dropping issue. And where things go from here, like how I view different characters in the story now, and even now looking back at the 3 issues and looking at some of the other characters and how they moved about throughout these first 3 issues, it's like there's a lot to reconsider in all of this. So this was an awesome, amazing fourth issue for Kill All Immortals.
Yeah, I mean, I texted you immediately. This issue in particular, right, was stellar. And this issue, this series in general, I've talked about it before. It's a top 3 series for me on the year.
Yeah.
And it's only 4 issues in. And the way Kaplan has sort of been taking us down this road, and the dominoes that he's set up, and as they're falling, this issue comes at a pivot point where you think things are going one way, and all of a sudden the dominoes just break at a complete 90-degree angle and just take you on this roller coaster. And the way it ends, right? We always talk about how a comic really needs to not only tell the story that it's telling, but it's got to propel you to the next issue, right? A comic is doing its job when it makes you want that next issue immediately. So Zach, if you're listening, my DMs are open. You can throw issue 5 at me whenever you'd like, because I need it. I need it like oxygen.
Yeah.
It was so good, Nick. Like you said your jaw dropped. I'm still floored. Just the way it ended, and everything leading up to that point. It was absolutely brilliant how this series and this story has been constructed so far.
Yeah, it was like, when you have writers who it's like you don't know if will they go there, what will they like, how, or if they don't go there, how are they going to pivot and stuff like that. Nah, Zach just went there, and I cannot believe that he did, and I'm really glad that he did, just because it's great for the story all around. Very much fits in all the ways, as much as it's just this massive shift. There is another Dark Horse title that we want to talk about. I'll let you lead us off on this one. The Carlisle School for Kings, issue 1. This is written by Nelson Graves with art by Davide Castelluccio.
Man, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I talked about this when When the Blood Is Dried, right, written by Gary Maloney, and we had him on the show to talk about it, and just sort of my love for these fun throwback fantasy stories. And that's what the Carlisle School for Kings is, right? It's a revenge story. It's a story, that's as old as time, right? But the character development in it, is it how do you pronounce the character's name? It's not Emma, is it M
I think
or
it's Emmy.
Emmy, right? Thank
That's
you.
how I
Yeah.
read it. Yeah.
Yeah. M or Emmy, however you want to pronounce it. Like that character of hers, like just the like revenge is just so steeped into her being, and it sort of reminded me a little bit of 7 Years in Darkness. Two
Yes.
completely different genres, right? Where you've got like with 7 Years in Darkness is about a select number of students being selected to be the next sort of big magical, powers that be, and they've got to go through this grueling school, and those who survive are the ones that make it. Very similar, but we're in the fantasy realm, and I love the premise of it, where every so often, you know, the heir apparent to be the next king, they're all chosen, and they have to go to this school, and they have to survive it, and sort of the most worthy will be chosen to be the next king. It's not just a simple bloodline succession. It could be,
It's a nice
right? And I
concept,
love that,
actually.
premise. Yeah, it was absolutely excellent. And I love the main character. She's full of piss and vinegar, which I love. And so, like, I got vibes of 7 Years in Darkness.
I jotted that
Uh
down too. 100%.
yeah,
Completely agree.
yeah, so good, so good. So this is a book you definitely want to pick up. Love the art, and again, like, it's a throwback fantasy, story to me, which I absolutely love. And I think anyone, not just a fantasy nut, but anyone can read this and go, yeah, I relate to that. That is fucking awesome.
Yeah, because it has like the school element to it too, and you have all these
Mm,
different players that you get to know. The only like the main, there's a few different people, but like, and it's not necessarily spoiling bringing anybody up, but the only one worth mentioning, I feel like, besides Emmy is Audie, her buddy.
yeah,
But I'll tell you what, that's because outside of Emmy and Audie, maybe the headmistress, everybody seems to kind of suck
yeah,
at this school. Like nobody else, like there's pick your character, you're probably going to hate them.
yeah,
Although we'll give it time. It's the first issue. Some of them
yep.
could be redeeming. I think there's potential for one that kind of jumps out, but still,
Hmm.
like this is very much something like when you said 7 Years in Darkness, I thought of that as well because it's like you're dealing with kids going to school and then the supernatural kind of element. That this is not that. It has, like you said, it's Ascension of Kings, but very much something anybody can get into. I think if you're a fantasy reader, you absolutely have to be checking out Carlisle School for Kings, 100%. So yeah, another great week from Dark Horse. Because I know I'm not even talking about the Magic Order issue 5, but great first issue. Continued with that in the second issue, and then just another jaw dropping final page. Awesome stuff from Mad Cave. We mentioned Hexiles earlier when Joe was talking about Exit City. Hexiles issue 1 is out this week. Make sure you guys pick that up at your local comic shop if you didn't have it on your pull list. Defenders of Earth issue 3. That's part of the whole Flash Gordon initiative that they have over there. Then Kosher Mafia issue 3, a title that I have been reading, and I don't think Joe's caught up on this, so I actually have dibs on Kosher Mafia, and we'll talk about that on the show in detail at some point down the line. And then the trade of Morningstar, which is by Tim Daniel and DB Andry. We've had them on the show before when that series began. Very excited to see this in trade form as well. Going to be adding this one to myself. Joe, you have not caught up on Kosher Mafia, correct?
No, because that was only the impression you had dibs.
Well, you had I said if you read the first issue by the time the second issue dropped, I would let you read it. So I would let you jump in. But since you didn't do that, then yeah, so kind of has pseudo dibs, I guess, or quasi dibs, but now full on. From IDW, I'll take us through these next couple here, Joe. IDW, we got Sonic the Hedgehog issue 74, My Little Pony, The Storm of Zephyr Heights issue 2, My Little Pony, Best of Discord issue 1. From Vault, we have Lilith issue 2, which I have dibs on. From Comics Tribe, we got Just Desserts Deluxe Edition issue 1. From Titan, The Savage Swords of Conan, issue 5. From Distillery, Come Find Me, An Autumnal Offering, issue 1. From Oni, we got Rick and Morty, Finals Week, Old Man Morty, issue 1. And then from Thundercats, we got, from Dynamite.
From Thundercats, we have Go Fuck Yourself, San Diego.
I, Thundercats is definitely driving the bus over at Dynamite right now, as much as Red Sonja is their number one. But from Dynamite, we got Thundercats issue 9, Red Sonja issue 15, Gargoyles Quest issue 5, Sweetie Candy Vigilante issue 5. And that brings us to Image and Skybound. Go ahead and take it away.
Yes, from Image and Skybound, we have Spawn issue 358, Redcoat issue 7, Spawn Kills Every Spawn issue 4, Knights vs. Samurai issue 2, Violent Flowers issue 2. This is a Maria Lovett joint. I spoke about Crave last week.
Definitely don't leave
very
it.
different story, but still just as wild as you could imagine a Maria Lovett book to be.
Nice.
It happened on Hyde Street, Devour issue 1, which I believe is a one-shot, Nicholas.
Yeah, a one shot within the Hyde Street universe. Very excited to check this one out. Definitely, if you like that first issue, definitely want to grab
That
this one.
first issue was fantastic.
Oh,
Yeah. Blood Squad 7, Strike File issue 1. Faster Than Light 3D issue 1. And then the last book we're going to talk about this week, Nicholas, and boy howdy, was it a doozy. Feral issue 7.
yeah, of course, friends of the show, Tony Fleece and Trish Forstner. The start of the second arc, because the sixth issue was a little like transitionary issue, kind of gave us a focus on one character and just a really like fun exercise in what they can do with this world that they've created in this pandemic that they've created. We spent a lot of time now at this point we're past the first arc, but so we can kind of talk about some of the events that happened there. We spent a lot of time getting to know the kittens that showed up in that final issue of the first arc. And I'll tell you what, I know when we talked to Trish and Tony, Trish tried to say like, we gotta take care of the kids. I don't trust their safety with Tony and Trish for one friggin' second. The way this whole issue was, like Trish said that, and I'm reading this and I'm like, I feel like we were lied to. I don't know about that. But I love the way where this issue ended. It's something that was kind of hinted at in our conversation with them previously, and it sets the stage. Like it's a great reentry, and now the stage is set for us for this arc to go in a bunch of different directions.
Yeah, I love Tony. I don't trust him with these cats as far as I can throw them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading this issue, going, oh, Tony, what you doing, Tony? But excellent, start to finish. The ending was, I love it because again, a lot of the books we've read this week, you have endings you don't see coming. And again, Tony, if you're listening, you got our email. All right, you can just it didn't listen. They don't have to be colored in. They don't have to be, just throw whatever you got our way. Just give us a little taste of what's to come because I'm very, very anxious
Yeah.
about what's coming down the pike. But seriously though, like I love the direction that we see things going in now, knowing the two of them, we know that things will probably take several twists and turns by the end of the arc. But what a great way to kick things back off.
Yeah, it was a great reentry, great start. Nice, like smooth transition kind of out of where things were before, and then just getting us going. So yeah, Feral's one of the best books going right now, one of the best books of the year without question. But the last set of books that we talked about, Image and Skybound, that means we're doing a mainline. That means Joe's going to be talking about a book from Image or maybe Skybound this week. What do you got for the people, Joe?
So I've mentioned this book and sort of the universe that this book belongs to. I'm reading them all, and that is the Universal Monsters universe that's Skybound, or Skybound, as some might say.
The layperson would say.
Yeah, I've heard it both ways.
Well done.
Thank you. So like this universe was never, because again, I'm a giant scaredy cat, so I was never into the old school monster movies. I mean, I love Dracula. Who doesn't love Dracula, right? And sort of these, and I do love Young Frankenstein. That's a great movie. But what Skybound is doing with this universe and giving these characters to some very prolific writers has been absolutely fantastic. I mean, they tried to do this cinematically with Tom Cruise, and that movie was so bad. I can't remember which one it was. It was so bad. They said, we're scrapping the entire thing. We're not doing it.
Yeah, it was The Mummy, I think, if I'm not
The
mistaken.
Mummy, yeah.
Which is
So what they
such a
failed
poor
to do,
decision. Like it's like you call it The Mummy, but it's not that Mummy. It's like, well, wait a second. What is we doing here?
Yeah, absolutely bananas. So what they failed to do cinematically, they're absolutely nailing here. With comics. So today, I thought this would be a perfect book to discuss that to sort of end spooky season on, and that's Universal Monsters Dracula, and written by none other than James Tynion IV, with art by Martin Simmons, colors by Martin Simmons.
They should do more stuff together.
Yeah, and letters by Russ Wooten. I almost wanted to continue joking. Letters by Martin Simmons, but no, Russ Wooten there. And before I jump into the synopsis, I wanted to say this because I was thinking of this earlier. And when it comes to horror, books, there's like tag teams that are just so effing perfect together, right? Like Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino, right? Like when it comes to horror, those two have it, right? John Lees and Alex Cormack, right? They're gonna terrify the shit out of you, and you got to put Tynan and Simmons on that list. They belong on that pantheon. Um, it started with the Department of Truth, and that's a different type of horror story.
Definitely.
But Martin Simmons, and I should, probably save this for the yard section, but like I want to get it out there now because as I'm describing and talking about this book, I want you and I want anyone watching or listening to understand the art, because I think, to me, that is the most prolific thing about this story is Martin Simmons' art here, because what he brings, is this sort of chaos to his art, right? It is very schizophrenic because I don't think he's got a single connected line ever, right? It's very
Sure.
sketchy, it's very frenetic, and it's very terrifying. And combine that with his use of colors in the palettes that he uses, really does evoke this haunting imagery. And Dracula, again, has been around, since the dawn of time, right? Everyone's familiar, with Dracula, in one way, shape, or form, or however the saying goes. And
Heard both ways.
yeah, thank you, Nicholas. And so you combine that lore and Tynan's storytelling ability with Simmons' absolutely like schizophrenic art style, and it just drives this, it just elevates this story to like a new height. So, synopsis: Dr. John Seward admits a strange new patient into his asylum. The madman tells stories of a demon who has taken residence next door. But as Dr. Seward attempts to apply logic to the impossible, his surrogate daughter, Lucy, begins to fall under the spell of the twisted Count Dracula. So the wonderful thing about these Universal stories is they're very tight, they're very contained, 4-issue stories. Bam, we got
Nice.
this. We've got the creature from the Black Lagoon lives, which is written by Dan Waters, and currently we have Frankenstein. I've heard it both ways. It's an inside joke. So like I said, like Tynan and Simmons, they just, when it comes to telling horror stories, they're just so good at it, right? And what I love about this book in particular is that, to me, right, Dracula is the character that's gonna sell the steak, right? He's you put his name, you put their name on the cover, and it's gonna pique people's interest. But this is just as much a Renfield story as it is a Dracula story, which I love. And the way that Simmons draws and colors Renfield is so effing horrifying, right? Because he's very pallid, he's very pale. There's a there's I always like to talk about characters' eyes. You can get so much detail about a character through their eyes, right? Whether TLDR does it brilliantly, and something is killing the children, and Simmons really takes it to a whole nother level here, and like these bright, like white eyes with these tiny little pupils on this really sketchy sort of drawn face and hair, and the just the way he draws the teeth it's very creepy and terrifying, which is almost in a stark contrast to sort of how he draws Dracula in this book, which is probably some of the most refined character work you'll see from Simmons in this, because that's, to me, that's Dracula. He's a very sort of debonair sort of, very refined character in general, except for when he's not, obviously.
Sure.
But the other thing I love, right, is that Dracula isn't mentioned by name, in the first issue, right? Let alone maybe the first few issues. He's just sort of
Huh.
referred to as, as Master, you know, by Renfield. And so what you get is you get Dr. Seward, sort of doing these one-on-ones with Renfield. And Renfield is he's eating insects and he's eating, flies, because that's all the nourishment he can get, because he keeps, raving about his master promising him, right? You know, uh to allow him to, he doesn't say it, but take a victim, right? Consume a human versus just these little flies and bugs. And he desires that so much, and he desires that the sort of the acceptance by his master. It and this whole time Dr. Seward's like, this guy's a flippin' loon, right? And there's been a whole bunch of disappearances, in the town, trying to, that have been unexplained. And Dr. Seward is convinced that this guy is suffering from not a mental disease, but maybe sort of a blood-borne disease, which is kind of ironic. And so this, because is also a story about sort of this doctor trying to solve this mystery of sort of, or what's going, who is Renfield, and he's trying to diagnose him, right? And he's got people around him to say, this guy's just nuts. And then we get introduced to a character later on who's like, I'm telling you who this guy is, and no one will believe him. And so there's just a lot of intrigue, surrounding the mystery of, of who the master is, and all these strange goings ons. And like I said, this is not like a story of just, where you get a lot of Dracula doing Dracula like things. It's layered, it's built. So when Dracula finally does, strike, it is very impactful. It is very, very haunting. But while, like I said, like, you get very little Dracula, you still get him, and you get him in various forms, right? Again, it's the work that Simmons does with eyes, right? Where you might be, have
Mm.
the shadows, and you might just see two red, sort of bursts of color that are in the shape of eyes, right? You might see Dracula in some different forms just lurking in the background that wouldn't make you suspect, like, oh, there's a demon, or there's a monster, a vampire in our midst. It's like there's a menacing looking dog, or whatever it might be, right? There's just these weird sort of, things that just don't seem out of place, but are out of place at the same time. And so, like, Dracula's always there, he's lurking. And again, that just adds to the suspense, and to the mystery, of it all. And so, eh, as the story goes on, like I said, there's another character that sort of comes from a faraway land that becomes pivotal in all of this. And then on top of that, you've got Dr. Seward's daughters. There's Mina, and then his surrogate daughter, Lucy, and she's the one that really becomes weirdly obsessed, with Dracula. When he does sort of, there's this aura, about Renfield, and this idea of the master, and she's hearing these stories, and she's becoming, very obsessed in her own way, but obsessed in, not like, I need to know who this guy is, but part of, who Dracula is. He's a bit of a Lothario, Nicholas, right? He's got the
Oh,
Kavorka, right? The lure of the animal,
look at you with all those syllables.
right? And so she's drawn to him, and so you got that story playing at the same time. And this is just a really well told story. And when the action, because it's not like, it's brilliantly paced, but it's not paced in the way where it's like there's constant action and you're flying through it. It's paced well in the sense that you're pulled into the story and you want to know what happens next. You want to know what happens next. So when those moments of chaos do occur, you're already all in. Right. This is 4 issues that you're gonna read, in one sitting. And when it's just all set up so well, so when the action does come, the payoff is so good, right? And you're just like, oh. And I just remember reading this, and from the first issue, from the first few pages, to be honest with you, I go, this is dibs. I'm in. I'm on it. This is a book I gotta discuss, because for horror fans, not only is it a really well written story, but again, it's Simmons' work that really elevates it and takes it to that sort of haunting, horrific level.
As much
Um,
as this is a Tynan book, I was very caught off guard when you called dibs on this, because like, oh, and when you did, it was like, okay, it's Tynan. So Joe's like, and obviously you love Martin Simmons' work as well, but I was blown away. And then now it's like hearing all this, like I shouldn't be, like, because it's Tynan and it's Simmons. They're an amazing team, one of the best in the
yeah,
business.
yeah, and like I said, like, they do a lot of haunting and horrifying things in Department of Truth. Two completely different stories.
Yeah,
And Department of Truth for me is become one of those books, like, I've got to sit down. I need quiet,
yeah,
and I've really, because there's so much to take in there. Whereas this, it's a much more simplistic story, and
nice.
and it and from a plot point of view, right? It's like, okay, but again, it is just the way that it's layered, and it's the way that Simmons draws it that really, I think, elevates, because it's hard to do new Dracula stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
people have been writing Dracula for how long now, right? Like, how
exactly.
long is this, right? And so to kind of take it from a different angle, I love the idea that you're getting a lot of this from Renfield's point of view, Renfield's narration. You get a lot of it from Dr. Seward's, a narration as well. It's just, I love that it's a Dracula book where he is not just in your face, front and center, every panel, every page. And that's, to me, what really makes it such a good story.
I just want to know,
Um,
when does Hugh Jackman show up in this story?
well, I'm not saying anything.
Oh,
Um,
that's the
the
guy. Here
main
we go.
right, the main characters, obviously Renfield, Dr. John Seward, and Dracula, and then you have Lucy. You have Mina, who becomes a very pivotal character in this. She befriends Renfield, and is kind to him, and that storyline that comes in towards the end is very interesting and plays a very pivotal part as well. And so there's another character in there that I don't want to mention. There's a couple other that I don't want to mention, but those are like the biggies, that you can really discuss without really spoiling things. So, you know, like I said, like, what I love about the Universal Monsters sort of universe that Skybound is playing in is that each one of these characters they've chosen so far, whether it's Dracula, whether it's the creature from the Black Lagoon, or Frankenstein, they've all every writer that they've assigned to them has done such a brilliant job of utilizing those characters without, like, just making them, you know, the center focus of every single page. There's some of the best character work has been done on some of these books, especially, and they're like secondary characters that you're just like, holy shit, like in Dracula, like, Renfield and Mina are great characters, right? And they're not the title character. The creature from the Black Lagoon, like, again, he's a monster that's in the background. Of course, like, the story revolves around, the main character trying to figure out, um it's it's mostly about everything but the creature from the Black Lagoon, but they're also a very important character to the story, if that makes sense. And then so far in Frankenstein, it's coming at it from a different angle, and you're getting, the wife of Dr. Frankenstein, the character work within her and who she is has been absolutely excellent, right? So, like, you're using these characters to like tell these wonderful stories, but it's so much more than just Dracula, Frankenstein, and the creature from the Black Lagoon. And I love that, because it's fresh and you're coming at it from a different approach. So I can't really. There's not much more I want to add about Martin Simmons' art, other than it quite frankly steals the show. It makes this
Ooh.
book really what it is. And so, if you're a horror fan, if you're a Dracula fan, um, this is absolutely a must read book. And like I said, you'll read it one sitting and you'll fly right through it.
The biggest thing for me coming out of this is like another example of Skybound taking a thing that's already around like people have tried doing stuff with recently and not a whole lot of success or maybe limited success, and they take it and they're telling these awesome stories. Like I hearing the breakdown of what Frankenstein is supposed to be, and then now hearing you as you previously raved about Dracula, it's remarkable what they've done here.
Who's the writer on Frankenstein again? It's
Michael Walsh.
Michael Walsh, thank you. Right, who's a great horror writer. And
Yeah,
so you've
several
got
parts.
James Tynion, Dan Waters, and Michael Walsh. Right, bang, bang, bang. Right, those are three writers, three creators that if they're writing a book, you're going to read it. Right,
Yep.
and sort of giving them free reign to sort of put their spin on these characters is brilliant,
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant.
But now you have Universal Monsters. That's three quality titles within all of those with familiar monsters. They obviously have the Energon universe where you have GI Joe in there, and then you
Mhm.
have Transformers in there. That is three properties that Skybound has taken control of, and obviously they don't have control of Universal Monsters, but they're dipping their toe in that pool as well, and they're succeeding on each one. So it's just whoever's calling the shots over there right now. Obviously that's Kirkman's imprint over at Image, but they're pulling all the right levers. It's very impressive to see because on all of these, it's like you kind of have no business doing like I didn't expect any of them to do as well as they were doing, and it's just been a sight to see, and great for the business too. And also, my other takeaway is you didn't mention Hugh Jackman, you also didn't mention Kate Beckinsale in this, so
Oh,
I'm waiting for them to show up.
Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah,
Be Still My Heart, Underworld. Oh,
yes,
oh.
Van Helsing was my introduction to her, but Underworld, yes, of course,
Yeah.
yeah,
Boy, howdy.
awesome.
Oh, not to get Randy here in Halloween, but yeah, Yabo.
Hey, she's all about the spooky shit. That's for damn sure. All right, awesome stuff with Universal Monsters Dracula. Now we're gonna switch gears a little bit with my title, which actually caught Joe by surprise a little bit. Because as we were getting ready and Joe's creating all the imagery that you guys see on Instagram, or maybe even now on our audio feeds, Sacred Lamb was not on his radar. But it is a title that I had ordered recently from TKO Studios because I saw it randomly and I was like, wait, Tim Silly did a TKO book? Like, I got to check this thing out 100%. The artist on this is Yelena Dordevich, and she's doing the colors as well. And then on letters, we have Steve Wand. And of course, with any TKO title, we're talking about one story told in 6 issues, sometimes maybe 5, but it's all in one, right in the trade paperback. I know we've had other occasions where with TKO you can order single issues like in a collected version. I think what's the Lemire title from TKO? You talked about it on
Sentient.
here. It was Sentient. Okay. I think did you get the single issues for that one as well? You got like an autograph one,
So
right?
yeah. So they had, I don't know if they still do them, but like you could buy the trade, or you could buy like the deluxe box set, and you
Yeah.
got each individual issue.
Yeah, I don't know if they're doing that with Sacred Lamb. I tried finding that just to let the people know. But what I did find is if you go to TKO Studios website while you're watching the stream now, if you like take a second to step away, or if you're listening to us and it's still Halloween or sooner, then you can get a deal on TKO books right now. I think it's select books or maybe like just their horror stuff. But I saw it was like a pretty significant discount on these titles. So definitely something to take advantage of. There's plenty of awesome TKO titles that we've talked about before. It's just been a little bit since we've done so. The genre for Sacred Lamb is meta horror. So there is kind of like a comedic element to it, but I wouldn't call it a horror comedy necessarily. And I'm going to tell you right now, before I get into anything else, like specific details, Joe, normally when it, I know I didn't ask with Dracula, but Dracula's been done in movie form and I'm sure show form in some capacity over the years, many a time. I want to say this right now. Sacred Lamb needs to be turned into a Netflix original movie or series. Netflix is the one that I hold in the highest regard, but it should be like a limited series could work very well. This could also work well as an original movie too. I just think they could have a lot of fun there, and this is something that could catch fire for people from a social standpoint if it was done as a streaming original. The synopsis for Sacred Lamb: online celebrity Kellen West, who just recently dispatched her stalker slash serial killer, Clay Coogan, on a live stream, finds herself the newest resident of a secluded town known as Sacred Lamb. This is where the government hides endemic victims under witness protection in hopes of preventing innocents from being murdered when inevitably psycho slashers return from the dead. So that pretty much does a good job of laying the land, giving you a nice overhead view of what's going on. There are a couple of things that I will get into to break down, such as endemic victims. They're also known as Eves in this story. And for those who don't know necessarily what endemic means, like myself, one of the definitions of it is of disease regularly occurring within an area or community. And with slashers where we see them like come back from the dead and whatnot, like that is part of where that name kind of comes from. And then and to go with that as well, with whenever we see a slasher type story, sometimes it's like, Michael Myers, who never freaking dies. Listen to Mac and Gooey, they'll talk about it all the time. But then you also have what I think typically, especially when it comes to like serial killer stuff, like the One Hand or I'm sorry, what the One Hand and the Six Fingers. I believe there's a thought of it being a copycat killer, right? Is how you referred to it previously, right, Joe? Yeah. So in this
Yeah.
instance, they specifically say sequel killers, which I think is just a nice little nod to the stories that kind of influenced Sacred Lamb. And I'll talk more about that with Tim's writing later on. But there's also you have sequel killers, or the thought is versions of the killer previously unknown to science. So basically, it's like saying, if this person comes back from the dead, science didn't know that kind of shit could happen. And that's it, again, like a kind of a wink and a nod to these previous like slasher stories. And looking at the characters, moving over there, I mentioned Kellen West. She's the main character. She's an influencer. She has now found herself in the Sacred Lamb community, and she's definitely the type of individual who just like doesn't trust what she's seeing right in front of her at any given time. And she's not necessarily wrong to. We mentioned Clay Coogan before. He is Kellen's slasher, who we meet. I mean, this story starts off right off the rip like a woman being chased down and trying to survive and fight for her survival. It is like it sets the tone right away and moves at a fast pace. Then we have Detective Olivia Hubbard. She is the officer who helps Kellen with Clay when he attacks her. She also remains Kellen's ally as she goes through the court system and then ends up being placed in the town of Sacred Lamb. But I say like it's described as a town, and it is in a way, but it's also like it has an odd like prison vibe to it because one of the other individuals is Warden Gennaro, first name Roberto, and it's like, why do you have
Roberto.
why do you have a warden in the town that you live in? And I know you're worried about keeping people keeping these people safe from potential copycats, but is there more at play with assigning a warden to this group of people? Then you have Ethan Richardson, who is one of Warden Gennaro's guards. In fact, it's his right hand man. Probably the one that gets definitely the one that gets fleshed out the most in this group. Then on top of Kellen West, we meet quite a few other Eves, again, also known as endemic victims. We have Diana Grell, aka the babysitter. So she is the longest tenured member of Sacred Lamb. Now remember, the members of Sacred Lamb, Joe, are these people who have survived these killers, these slasher type people who, by the way, they don't want to refer to them as slashers in this story. Like they it comes up, but they're like, we don't want to do that and give them that kind of power and credit and stuff. Totally get it, but it's also like a wink and a nod to like slashers, just like, you know, that's anyways. So Diana Grell having a nickname though, like how often like do you see a survivor of this kind of attack getting a nickname? And the babysitter also feels like a little weird. So and I'll tell you, when you meet her right away, she is kind of she feels very much off. Another one of these Eves is Shania. She's probably it
Does
between
she feel like a woman?
she's got something going on, I'll tell you that. She's the babysitter. No, I know what it meant. What you meant. The babysitter is I would say unnerving. And then Shania is like the most messed up, I think, of all of these Eves, just because it's mostly because of the slasher that she dealt with previously. And we do get to meet other members of this Sacred Lamb community, and we learn about their killers in the course of the story as well. But that's like I'm getting too much in the weeds. Like you guys will experience that when you get there. Not necessarily crucial by and large to the story, but they all have their roles to play. I've mentioned it quite a bit throughout this, but Tim's like winks and nods to the slasher stories, like the genre. I just thought that was so well done, and also like it made things feel familiar, but it also like he didn't like lean on that too much necessarily either. This very much feels like its own thing, and I think at the end of it all, when you read this and when other people read this, the biggest takeaway, like outside of just like enjoying the story, will be like this is layered so well. Like I've explained a bunch of different shit that like elements to this story, but I'm telling you right now, nothing is as it seems in this entire story. There are countless okey dokes throughout all of Sacred Lamb, and I was just like, it's like one after another, and you just and I right now I've done nothing to tip my hand in any of this. So I'm kind of I was blown away by that as I was reading it. And then the pacing, like we talk about that all the time, how important it is, especially with comics. Largely fast moving, like very like the first few pages are like this moves so quick. But then there are moments where the story also slows down. And those are the moments where it needs to slow down because there's like as things move so quickly and as we're getting to know all these individuals and kind of trying to figure out alongside Kellen, like what the fuck is going on here? Because there's so many different questions being asked. Things need to slow down a little bit. We need some qualifiers in this story just to know what the fuck is going on because otherwise it just doesn't add up. And I thought Tim did a really good job with that as well. As for the art in this story, again, the lines and the colors are done by Yelena Dordevich. I'll tell you what, like a lot of these people, like if you look at the cover, like that's Yelena's art. Like these people all look a bit ghastly. And you mentioned the eyes and how they can tell the story so much. Like everybody that is an Eve is like their eyes look like they're popping out of their head for the most part. There may be like one or two
I want to
exceptions.
have their thyroid checked out.
They okay. Thanks, Doc. I am always
Hypothyroidism,
yeah, I guess that's the thing. Who knew? So maybe they have that. I'll tell you what, I can confirm that no one got checked for that in this story. I don't know if that's a spoiler. I'm sorry if it is. But like feels like everybody's eyes are like popping out of their head in this story. It's just because this is like no one's safe at any given moment, even though this is supposed to be a fucking safe community. And then on top of that, too, her inks in this, like particularly on the faces of these individuals, the Eves really stands out because it adds a little bit of like wear and tear to them. Like they feel like these people have been through some shit. They've all experienced like this near death experience, and they have reason to think like something could happen again because everybody thinks something could happen to them again, possibly for various reasons. So it's like they can never really settle in, and that kind of stress is going to weigh on you over time. And then while this is a slasher, this is absolutely bloody, and there is plenty of action. It doesn't get. I wouldn't say this is gory though. I don't think that her art style necessarily like her art style doesn't like go with that. Like when we talk about like a Jason Shawn Alexander, where his stuff can kind of get gory at times, it has like a slightly different feel. But I appreciate that. I think it's done really well because I think like you still got to get bloody bad shit's still got to happen. We do have some crazy acts of violence throughout the story, but it's just like using it effectively. Like, and there are times where, like, when you have certain art styles where it's like, let's just go balls to the wall, nuts with this shit, and it totally makes sense, and I'm here for it. But you don't necessarily need to do that all the time. And I think Sacred Lamb, given the nature of the story, you don't need to do that at all times. But again, that's not to say that this is like not a violent story. It's just that I think where sometimes stories go like that extra mile with that violence, there like we go far here, but I feel like it's just not like that next step of like, holy fuck. I guess that's my difference. But Sacred Lamb, like this is all available in one trade right now. Like TKO does it oversized. To pick this one up, you guys are gonna binge the shit out of it.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Oh
And
man.
Joe, that's gonna bring an end to spooky season for spooky season 2024. Very much a success because when was the last time we did in October where we talked about a book each week?
2-3 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a bit because we've had specials that we've done with Dork. We've done Fireside chats with people as well, which some of those
This
maybe
might be a first since we started the show, and
yeah,
even then, we might not have done an entire month of spooky books.
yeah,
Might be
yes.
a first, to be honest with you.
That is a good point. But we are going to be getting back to Fireside Chats at some point. Don't know when, but make sure you subscribe to our audio channels because that's the only place you're going to find those conversations with creators across the industry. And make sure you leave a 5-star rating and review while while you are there. But I can say that next week, Joe, we are going to be doing our November solicit as we move past spooky season, get rolling on what's coming out throughout the month of November. And pretty soon we're going to be getting into floppies. We're going to be getting into the gift guide as well. So we got a lot to come soon.
Yeah, it's a fun time of the year. A fun time of the year for sure. We got a lot of great things planned, and as much as I thought I had my floppies all sorted out, now I'm hemming and hawing. Right, I should go with my gut, but we'll see. The graphics are already made, Nicholas, so we'll see.
Oh man. Well, either way, until next week, stay sexy.
Yeah, and don't forget, people, keep reading. Most importantly, yeah, let's go. End, please. Jesus.